a sad match. Muster.
I have so many things to tell, and I hope I can one day have grandchildren. I mean, and they will ask me, grandfather, what did you? We know you've been a great tennis player, and I'd love to tell them those stories because I think they're fantastic and they've been part of my life. But you can learn so much out of these situations. I really enjoyed what I did. I mean, I will never regret anything I did, and that decision to become a tennis professional was the best decision I've ever made. There's a wish, there's a dream, and sometimes there's success.
April 1st, 1989, Miami, Florida. Thomas Muster had just defeated Yannick Noah of France in the semifinals of the Lipton International Players Championships. The 21-year-old Austrian, ranked number 7 in the world, was scheduled to face Ivan Lendl, the world number 1, in the final the next day. Everyone in tennis was buzzing about the matchup. Later that night, while unloading equipment from his car in a hotel parking lot, a drunk driver slammed into him, pinning him against a parked vehicle and completely destroying his left knee. Doctors told him he might never walk normally again. 6 years later, Muster would stand on court Philippe Chatrier holding the Coupe de Mousquetaire, having just won the French Open. The journey between those two moments would require something that goes far beyond talent. Thomas Muster grew up in Leibnitz, Austria, a small town of about 7,000 people in the wine country of southern Styria. His father, also named Thomas, ran a modest wine business. The Muster family wasn't wealthy by any stretch. They had a small house, a few vineyards, and not much else. Young Thomas started playing tennis at age 8 on the local courts, and by his early teens, it was clear he had something special. He didn't have the graceful game of Stefan Edberg or the explosive power of Boris Becker. What he had was relentless grinding power from the baseline, particularly on clay, and a work ethic that bordered on obsessive. By 1989, Muster had already made serious waves on the ATP Tour. He'd won his first title in Hilversum in 1986 at 18 years old, defeating Jakob Hlasek in the final. He'd reached the semifinals of the Australian Open in 1989, losing to Ivan Lendl, but showing he belonged at that level. By 1988, he'd won 4 titles in a single year and climbed to number 16 in the world. His game was perfectly suited for clay courts. Heavy topspin forehand, excellent movement, and the kind of physical endurance that let him outlast opponents in long baseline rallies. People were starting to call him the Musterminator because of his relentless style. The accident happened late on the night of April 1st. According to multiple reports, Muster had just finished his semifinal match against Noah earlier that day, winning in straight sets. He was back at his hotel, unloading gear from the trunk of his car when a drunk driver lost control and pinned him against a parked vehicle. The impact completely destroyed Muster's left knee. We're talking severed ligaments, damaged cartilage, extensive soft tissue damage, the kind of injury that ends careers. Muster was rushed to a Miami hospital for emergency treatment, but he insisted on flying back to Vienna for surgery. The Austrian doctors performed the reconstruction, but even they were cautious about his prognosis. This was 1989, remember? Sports medicine wasn't what it is now. ACL reconstruction was still a relatively new procedure. The rehabilitation protocols weren't as refined. Muster was told he'd be in a cast for months, that rehabilitation would take at least a year, and that even if he did come back to professional tennis, he'd never be the same player. Here's where the story gets interesting. Most athletes would have taken that news and adjusted their expectations accordingly. Muster's response, according to his coach Ronnie Leitgeb, was to immediately start thinking about how to maintain his tennis skills while his leg healed. Within weeks of the surgery, while still in a cast from hip to ankle, Muster and Leitgeb designed a special chair that would allow him to practice hitting tennis balls while seated. Leitgeb later told Sports Illustrated about the first time they tried it. 2 weeks earlier, he thought he'd never run again. But when he started hitting balls, I saw the fire in his eyes. From that moment, I knew he would come back. Muster would sit in this custom chair for hours each day, having someone feed him balls, practicing his ground strokes using just his upper body and core rotation. It sounds almost absurd, but Muster was deadly serious about not letting his skills atrophy. The rehabilitation process was brutal. Muster worked with physical therapists multiple times a day. He did pool exercises to rebuild the muscles around his knee without putting weight on it. He did isometric exercises to maintain muscle tone. zone. According to reports from people who saw him during this period, he was completely obsessed with coming back. Not just coming back to play tennis casually, but coming back to compete at the highest level. By September 1989, roughly 5 months after the accident, Muster was back playing competitive tennis at challenger events. His first tournaments back were difficult. The knee was stiff, he didn't trust it to hold up during hard lateral movements, and his timing was off after so long away. But he kept grinding, kept working, kept pushing through the doubt and pain. The 1990 season marked his real return. Muster won his first title since the accident at the Adelaide International in January. He reached the finals of the Monte Carlo Masters in the spring. In May, he won the Italian Open in Rome, defeating Andres Gomez in the semifinals and Andrei Chesnokov in the final. At the French Open that year, he reached the semifinals before losing to eventual champion Gomez. By the end of 1990, Muster was back in the top 10, ranked number 7 in the world. He was awarded ATP Comeback Player of the Year, but Grand Slam success still eluded him. 1991 brought some progress. 1992 was better, with Muster reaching the quarterfinals at Roland Garros. 1993 saw him win 7 titles, all on clay, but he lost in the third round of the French Open. 1994 brought 3 clay court titles, but a third-round loss at Roland Garros again. Some tennis writers started suggesting that maybe Muster was just a very good clay court player who'd never win a major. The injury had taken something from him, the argument went, and he didn't quite have that extra gear needed for 7 best-of-5 set matches in 2 weeks. Then came 1995, and everything changed. Muster started the year in Mexico City, winning his first title. He won in Estoril in April, though he had to save a match point against Javier Sanchez in the quarterfinals. In Barcelona, he nearly lost in the first round to Jordi Barillo, but came through and won the tournament. The Monte Carlo Masters brought perhaps his most dramatic escape. In the final against Boris Becker, Muster was down match points in the 4th set tiebreak. Becker double faulted on the first championship point. Muster went on to win the match in 5 sets, 4-6, 5-7, 6-1, 7-6, 6-0. He won in Rome again, defeating Sergei Bruguera in the final. By the time the French Open rolled around in late May, Muster had won 6 titles in less than 4 months, all on clay. He had a 35-match winning streak on the surface. People were starting to talk seriously about him winning Roland Garros. The 1995 French Open field was stacked. You had defending 2-time champion Sergei Bruguera. You had Andre Agassi, ranked number 1 in the world. You had Pete Sampras, though he'd never been comfortable on clay. You had Yevgeny Kafelnikov, the talented Russian who was starting to peak. And you had Michael Chang, the 1989 champion who was still playing solid tennis. Muster came in as the 5th seed. Muster's first-round match was against 16th seed Malavi Washington of the United States. Straight sets, 6-4, 6-4, 6-3. The match was clinical. Muster got into his rhythm early, started hitting those heavy topspin forehands that would kick up high on the clay, and just wore Washington down. The second and third rounds brought more comfortable wins, with Muster dropping only 1 set through the first 3 rounds. The 4th round brought a tougher challenge. Muster's opponent has been lost to history in most records, but he advanced through in 4 sets. What stood out to people watching was how composed Muster remained throughout. He was managing his energy, not overhitting, playing smart tennis. The quarterfinal was against Albert Costa, a 19-year-old Spaniard who Muster had just beaten in the Estoril final weeks earlier. Costa came out determined to exact revenge. The young Spaniard won the first set, and after Muster took the second, Costa won a tight 3rd set tiebreak to go up 2-1. This was the moment that defined Muster's tournament. Down a set, facing a talented young clay courter with nothing to lose, Muster could have folded. Instead, he won the 4th set 7-5 in a battle, then breezed through the 5th set 6-0. After the match, reporters noted that Muster never panicked, never got frustrated, just kept grinding. The semifinal brought Yevgeny Kafelnikov, who had already upset Agassi in the quarterfinals. Kafelnikov was 21 years old, playing brilliant tennis, and had legitimate chances to win. But Muster was operating on a different level by this point. He won in straight sets, 6-4, 6-0, 6-4. The scoreline doesn't fully capture how dominant Muster was. By the 3rd set, you could see Kafelnikov starting to fade physically. Muster's fitness, rebuilt through years of grueling rehabilitation and training, was simply superior. The final was set. Thomas Muster versus Michael Chang. Chang had won the French Open in 1989 in one of the most famous Grand Slam victories ever, beating Ivan Lendl while battling cramps, using underhand serves, and generally refusing to give up. Chang was 23 years old in 1995, seeded 6th, still in his prime, and his defensive game was perfectly suited for clay. If you wanted to design an opponent who could give Muster problems, it would look a lot like Michael Chang. June 11, 1995, Court Philippe Chatrier, the final of the French Open. The first set was a war. Long rallies, multiple deuces in most games, both players refusing to give an inch. Muster's power against Chang's speed and court coverage. Muster broke late and took the set 7-5. The crowd, which had been somewhat neutral, started getting behind Muster. There's something about watching a player grind out points for 2 hours that wins over tennis fans. The second set showed Muster at his peak. He broke Chang twice and completely controlled the baseline rallies. The set went 6-2. At this point, Muster was up 2 sets to love, and you could see him starting to believe. After 6 years of rehabilitation, of rebuilding his game, of working his way back from an injury that should have ended his career, he was 1 set away from winning the French Open. Chang came out aggressive in the third set. He started taking more chances, hitting harder, trying to shorten points. He broke Muster early and held for a 3-1 lead. The crowd got louder, sensing a potential comeback. But Muster, showing the mental strength he'd developed over years of fighting through pain and doubt, broke right back. He held serve to even it at 3-3. From there, it became a matter of who would blink first. Muster held serve to go up 5-4 and would serve for the championship. On his first championship point, Chang hit a brilliant return that Muster couldn't handle. On the second championship point, Muster hit a forehand long. Deuce, advantage Muster, championship point number 3. The rally lasted 15 shots, both players trading heavy ground strokes from the baseline. Finally, Chang's backhand sailed long. Thomas Muster fell to his knees on the red clay of Court Philippe Chatrier. 6 years, 2 months, and 10 days after a drunk driver had crushed his knee and nearly ended his career, he was the French Open champion. The final score was 7-5, 6-2, 6-4. In the immediate aftermath, Muster was remarkably composed. He shook hands with Chang, thanked the chair umpire, and waved to the crowd. It wasn't until the trophy ceremony that the emotion really hit him. When he hoisted the Coupe des Mousquetaires, tears streamed down his face. In his speech, delivered in somewhat broken English and French, he thanked his coaches, his family, and specifically mentioned the doctors and physical therapists who had helped him recover from the accident. The rest of 1995 continued Muster's dominance. He won 6 more titles after Roland Garros, giving him 12 for the year, which set an ATP Tour record at the time. His 40-match winning streak on clay was the longest since Bjorn Borg's 46-match streak in the late 1970s. He finished the year ranked number 3 in the world. His success on clay continued into 1996. Muster won 7 more titles in the first few months of the year, including his 3rd Monte Carlo and 3rd Rome championships. On February 12, 1996, he officially became the number 1 ranked player in the world for the first time, overtaking Andre Agassi. He held the top ranking for 6 weeks total, though Pete Sampras and Agassi both questioned whether Muster deserved the ranking given his struggles on surfaces other than clay. Muster never won another Grand Slam title. He reached the round of 16 at the 1996 French Open, losing to eventual finalist Michael Stich. In 1997, he showed he could compete on hard courts, reaching the semifinals of the Australian Open and winning the Miami Masters on hard court at the same venue where his career had nearly ended 8 years earlier. But injuries began to pile up. A hip problem in October 1996 limited his playing time. By 1999, at age 31, Muster retired from professional tennis. Looking back now, 30 years later, Muster's 1995 French Open victory stands out not just as a great tennis achievement, but as one of the most impressive comeback stories in sports history. The injury he suffered in 1989 would have ended most careers. The fact that he not only came back but reached number 1 in the world and won a Grand Slam title speaks to a level of determination and mental toughness that's rare even among elite athletes. There's a quote from Muster in a 2020 interview with the ATP Tour website where he reflected on his career. "To win a slam is very special. That rock that falls off your shoulders when you win match point, I enjoyed that moment. It was very emotional. About reaching number one, he said, "I don't know how many people can say that. Measurably, they have been number one at something, the best in the world." I love that moment. So here's a question for you. In an era where sports medicine has advanced so much, where athletes recover from injuries that would have been career-ending just a generation ago, do we appreciate these comeback stories enough? Because what Muster did, recovering from that kind of knee injury with the limited medical technology of 1989, spending months hitting balls from a chair just to maintain his skills, and then winning the French Open 6 years later, seems almost impossible. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story as compelling as I did, consider subscribing for more deep dives into tennis history.